Hello everyone. If you love heartwarming animal stories and want to follow the inspiring journey of these adorable friends, don't forget to hit the subscribe button now so you won't miss any of our videos. Now, let's dive into today's emotional story. The world had been so bright for 8-year-old Emma. It had been simple, filled with the warmth of her mother's love and laughter. Every day was a new adventure, filled with little moments of joy and comfort. But all of that changed in an instant, when a sudden and tragic car accident took her mother away. Emma didn't understand how or why it happened, only that it had. She couldn't comprehend how the world she had known had been torn apart so suddenly. The bright smile that had once greeted her every morning was gone, leaving a hole in her heart that felt impossible to fill. The day of the funeral felt like a blur. There were so many people around her, all of them speaking in hushed tones, offering sympathy. But it didn't matter. Emma felt like she was in a different world, disconnected from the reality of everyone around her. She couldn't bring herself to cry, though her heart ached with a pain that seemed too deep to express. In the weeks that followed, Emma found herself in a new home with her grandparents. Her father, unable to take care of her, had arranged for Emma to stay with her maternal grandparents, Margaret and John, in a small house on the outskirts of town. It was a peaceful place, surrounded by lush gardens and a quiet street, but it felt more like a prison to Emma. Nothing here felt familiar, and nothing here could replace the warmth and security she had once felt in her mother's embrace. At first, Emma resisted everything: her new room, her new life, the kindness her grandparents tried to offer her. She missed her mother terribly, and nothing seemed to ease the emptiness she felt inside. The house was quiet without her mother's laughter filling the air, and Emma could barely bring herself to speak. Her grandmother would try to engage her, asking if she wanted to help cook dinner or go outside for a walk, but Emma would only nod quietly, never really participating. Her grandfather, John, was quieter than Margaret. He worked outside in the garden, never saying much. He respected Emma's silence, knowing that words couldn't bring her mother back. But it seemed like no one, not even her grandparents, understood the depth of her pain. Emma couldn't understand why her mother had been taken from her. She hadn't been able to say goodbye. Every night, she would lie in her bed, staring at the ceiling, wishing that somehow she could wake up from this nightmare and find her mother's voice calling her from the kitchen, or her arms waiting to hold her close. As the days wore on, Emma withdrew further into herself. She spent more and more time alone, gazing out of her bedroom window, her thoughts distant. The only time she felt any sense of peace was when the house was silent. It was easier then, easier to pretend her mother was still with her. But in the silence, the weight of her grief became heavier, and soon even the quiet couldn't shield her from the sorrow that seemed to consume her. One evening, after dinner, Margaret sat down beside Emma, offering her a gentle smile. "I know you're hurting, sweetheart," she said softly. "But you don't have to go through this alone. We're here for you. And I think maybe it's time for you to have something to look forward to, something to help you heal." Emma didn't say anything, but her curiosity piqued at her grandmother's words. Margaret pulled out a flyer from her bag. It was from a local animal shelter, showing a picture of a small, golden dog. "We've been talking," Margaret continued. "And we think it might help to bring a dog into the house. A companion, someone who could help bring a little joy back into your life." Emma stared at the flyer, her heart pounding in her chest. A dog? She had never considered having a pet before, not in a million years. How could a dog possibly help her? The pain of losing her mother was too much to overcome. But the look in her grandmother's eyes, gentle, hopeful, made Emma pause. Could a dog really help her feel better? Could a small, furry creature fill the emptiness that her mother's absence had left behind? I don't know, Emma whispered, her voice hoarse from not speaking much. How could a dog help? It won't bring her back. Margaret placed a hand on Emma's shoulder, her voice kind but firm. No, it won't bring her back. But sometimes, dear, we need something to help us heal. And maybe a dog could help you find the courage to start living again. Emma didn't respond, but as she sat there, holding the flyer in her hands, she couldn't help but wonder. Could it really work? Could a dog help her heal from this deep, aching loss? She didn't have the answers, but she knew one thing: the thought of her mother being gone forever was unbearable. Anything, even a dog, might be worth considering if it could help her feel something other than the crushing weight of grief. The next day, after much hesitation, Margaret and John took Emma to the animal shelter. The thought of meeting a dog was still overwhelming, but something in Emma's heart told her she needed to try. She didn't know it yet, but the moment she walked into the shelter, her life was about to change in ways she couldn't have imagined. The animal shelter was smaller than Emma had expected, a humble little place tucked away on the edge of town. As she entered with her grandparents, a sense of unease settled over her. The shelter smelled of freshly cleaned floors mixed with the earthy scent of wet fur. Dogs of all shapes and sizes barked and wagged their tails as they caught sight of the new visitors, but Emma remained silent, her eyes downcast. She wasn't sure what to expect or even if she wanted anything at all. Margaret noticed her granddaughter's reluctance and gently placed a hand on Emma's shoulder. "It's okay, sweetheart. You don't have to make any decisions today. Just have a look. We can leave whenever you want." Emma gave a faint nod, her mind swirling with thoughts of her mother. How could she possibly open her heart to a dog when her own world felt so broken? But still, she allowed herself to be guided through the rows of cages, watching as her grandparents spoke with the shelter worker. Emma's eyes drifted over the dogs, but she didn't connect with any of them. There was a pitiful-looking terrier, a small poodle with sad eyes, and even a large, intimidating bulldog that barked loudly whenever she passed by. None of them seemed to stand out, none of them seemed to offer what Emma needed. Just as she was about to turn away, something caught her attention. At the far end of the shelter, in a quieter corner, a small dog sat in the back of a cage, watching the visitors with a curious gaze. His fur was golden, slightly matted, but his eyes were bright, full of warmth and understanding. His posture was calm, almost regal, as though he could sense her presence from across the room. Emma couldn't look away. The dog didn't bark or wag his tail wildly like the others. He simply sat, watching her with eyes that seemed to say, "I understand." Margaret noticed where Emma's gaze had landed. "That's Leo," she said softly. "He's been here for a while. He's a little shy but very sweet. I think he might be the one." Emma didn't respond, but her heart raced as she moved closer to the cage. Leo watched her the entire time, his eyes following every step she took. As Emma stood by the cage, Leo stood up and padded to the front, his tail wagging slowly. He didn't jump up or bark, he simply stood there, waiting for Emma to make the next move. The shelter worker opened the cage and stepped aside. "Would you like to meet him?" she asked, her voice kind. Emma hesitated, unsure if she was ready. But something about Leo's gentle nature made her feel like this was her chance. She nodded, and the worker carefully brought Leo out, holding his leash firmly but gently. As Leo stepped onto the floor, he walked cautiously toward Emma. She knelt down, holding her hand out tentatively. The moment Leo reached her, he nuzzled his head into her palm, giving her a gentle lick as if to say, "I'm here for you." Emma's heart skipped a beat. For the first time in months, she felt a tiny flicker of warmth inside her. The grief that had weighed her down for so long seemed a little lighter in that moment. She smiled, a small, almost imperceptible smile, and for the first time, she didn't feel so alone. "He's perfect," Emma whispered, almost to herself. Margaret looked at her granddaughter, a tear in her eye. "Do you want to bring him home, Emma?" For the first time since her mother's death, Emma felt a surge of hope. She didn't know if Leo could heal the pain she carried, but he had given her something she hadn't felt in a long time, a sense of connection. She nodded, more confidently this time. "Yes. I want to bring him home." And just like that, Leo became part of their family. The journey home felt different. The car ride was quieter than usual, but there was an air of expectancy, a sense of anticipation that hadn't been there before. Emma sat in the back seat with Leo on her lap, his head resting against her chest. It was as if Leo knew exactly what she needed, and for the first time, Emma felt like she was taking a step forward, even if it was just a small one. When they arrived home, Emma's grandparents helped her settle Leo into his new space. The little dog wandered around curiously, sniffing everything in sight. But whenever he looked back at Emma, there was a soft, reassuring gaze that seemed to say, "I'm here. You're not alone." In the days that followed, Emma's connection with Leo deepened. He followed her everywhere, around the house, into the yard, and even into her room at night, where he curled up at the foot of her bed. Leo wasn't a talker, but his presence spoke volumes. When Emma was feeling sad, he would nudge her with his nose, as if asking for a hug, or simply lie next to her, offering the kind of comfort she had forgotten existed. Gradually, Emma began to speak more, though only to Leo. She told him about her mother, about the empty space she felt inside, and about the pain that still hadn't healed. Leo listened without judgment, his eyes filled with quiet understanding. And, bit by bit, Emma felt the weight of her grief begin to lift. She began to smile more, especially when Leo would chase his favorite ball around the yard, his little body bouncing with energy. The sight of him so full of life reminded Emma that there was still joy to be found, even in the midst of sorrow. Leo had not only filled the silence of their home, but he had also filled a void in Emma's heart. His presence was a reminder that, even after loss, there was still room for love, for connection, and for healing. He wasn't just a dog, he was a lifeline. For the first time in a long while, Emma started to feel like she was coming back to life. And it was all because of the little dog named Leo. As the weeks passed, Emma and Leo became inseparable. The dog's presence was a constant source of comfort to her. It was as though Leo had always been a part of her life, filling the emptiness left by her mother's death. Each day, Emma grew a little stronger, her connection to Leo deepening in ways she never imagined possible. The pain was still there, hidden in the corners of her heart, but with Leo by her side, it didn't feel quite as heavy. Emma's grandparents, Margaret and John, began to notice the subtle changes in her. At first, Emma had withdrawn completely, unable to find the words to express what she was going through. But now, she was talking more, even if it was just to Leo. She would recount stories from her childhood, her eyes softening as she spoke of her mother. Leo, ever patient, would sit beside her, his head resting on her knee, listening without judgment. One evening, after a particularly difficult day, Emma was sitting on the porch with Leo by her side, staring out at the setting sun. She hadn't realized how much she missed the warmth of the sun on her face until that moment. The quiet calm of the evening was the first peace she had felt in weeks. Her grandparents came outside, John holding a tray of freshly baked cookies. "Would you like some, Emma?" Margaret asked gently, sitting down beside her. Emma glanced at them for a moment before nodding. "Yes, thank you," she said softly. Her voice had a new softness to it, one that Margaret hadn't heard in a long time. As they shared the cookies, Emma found herself smiling. For the first time in a while, the joy of a simple moment like this felt real. Leo's soft, warm presence by her side was a comfort, and Emma realized that even though she would always miss her mother, life could still have moments of happiness. With Leo, she could feel the first stirrings of hope. Over the next few days, Emma's behavior continued to change. She began to take more interest in the activities around her. She would play with Leo in the yard, tossing the ball and laughing when he chased after it with unbridled joy. The sound of her laughter, soft and genuine, was music to her grandparents' ears. It wasn't much, but it was enough to show them that their granddaughter was slowly coming back to life. One afternoon, Margaret and John decided to take Emma on a walk through the nearby park. At first, Emma hesitated, still unsure of the world outside their house, but Leo wagged his tail and nudged her gently, urging her to get up. She smiled at the dog, feeling a spark of something she hadn't felt in a long time: curiosity. "Let's go, Leo," Emma whispered, and with that, she stood up, taking Leo's leash in her hand. Her grandparents walked alongside her, and as they strolled through the park, Emma felt a little lighter. The world, though still tinged with sadness, seemed a little more bearable. It wasn't just the walks that made a difference. Emma had started to take small steps to rebuild her life. She began helping her grandmother in the garden, planting flowers and pulling weeds. The simple act of nurturing something living gave Emma a sense of purpose. When she worked alongside Leo, who would chase the butterflies or lie in the shade while she worked, it was as if Emma had found a rhythm again. Gradually, she began to speak more openly to her grandparents. At first, it was just a word or two, but over time, the words grew longer. One afternoon, as they sat in the garden, Emma turned to Margaret and said, "I think Mom would have liked the garden. She always loved flowers." Margaret smiled softly, her eyes filled with warmth. "I'm sure she would have, sweetheart," she said. "She would be so proud of you." Emma felt her heart swell at her grandmother's words. For the first time in months, she didn't feel like she was just going through the motions. She felt alive again, truly present. And in that moment, Emma knew that, though her mother was gone, the love they had shared would never fade. She would carry that love in her heart, and with Leo's help, she would continue to find her way forward. Leo had become more than just a dog. He was her anchor, her guide, and her source of comfort. He had helped her rediscover what it felt like to be loved, to laugh, and to feel joy. And, in turn, Emma had helped him find a place in her heart, just as he had found a place in her home. As the days went by, Emma's transformation was undeniable. She had not completely healed, and she knew the pain of losing her mother would never fully disappear. But with Leo by her side, she no longer felt lost in her grief. She was finding her way back, one small step at a time. As the weeks went by, Emma's bond with Leo grew stronger. The dog had become her constant companion, her emotional anchor in a world that had once seemed so cold and empty. With Leo, Emma could finally feel something other than sadness. She began to venture out into the world more, not just for walks, but also to reconnect with the people and places she had once known. One afternoon, Emma and Leo were walking through the park when they encountered a group of children playing near the swings. At first, Emma hesitated. She had always been shy, especially after the tragedy of losing her mother, but something in her stirred as she watched the children laugh and play. Leo, sensing her discomfort, nudged her gently with his nose, as if to encourage her to take the first step. Emma smiled and crouched down to give Leo a gentle scratch behind the ears. "Go ahead, Leo," Emma whispered. "Let's see if they want to play." To her surprise, one of the children, a little girl with brown pigtails, ran over to her. "Is that your dog?" she asked with a wide smile. Emma nodded, her heart beating faster. The little girl, excited, began talking about how much she loved dogs, and soon, the other children gathered around Emma and Leo. For the first time in what felt like forever, Emma wasn't on the sidelines. Leo's presence had made the other kids approach her, and suddenly she wasn't just the quiet, sad girl anymore. She was Emma, the girl with the dog. The afternoon passed in a blur of laughter and light. Leo chased the ball with the children, and Emma found herself playing too. She hadn't realized how much she missed simple pleasures like running and laughing with other kids. The pain of losing her mother was still there, lurking in the background, but for those few hours, it didn't feel so overwhelming. Emma could see that Leo was happy too, wagging his tail and playing along with the children. It was as if the dog had brought her back to life, step by step. When they returned home, Margaret and John greeted them with smiles, surprised by how animated Emma seemed. Leo was panting happily, his tongue hanging out, while Emma's face was lit up with a soft, genuine smile. "That was fun," Emma said, her voice filled with a new sense of confidence. "I played with the other kids. Leo made me feel better." Margaret and John exchanged a glance, their eyes filled with relief. They had watched Emma slowly retreat into herself after her mother's death, but now, they could see the small, yet significant progress she had made. Emma was slowly coming back to herself, and Leo had been the key to unlocking that part of her. Over the next few months, Emma continued to grow stronger. She started attending school again, though it was a slow process. At first, she kept to herself, but with Leo by her side, she found the courage to speak up in class. Her teachers noticed her improvement and praised her for her efforts, though Emma knew the true credit belonged to Leo. Leo's presence in her life had done more than simply help her heal emotionally, it had given her the strength to face the world again. His gentle nature and unwavering support had shown Emma that there was still hope, that life could be good again, even after such a devastating loss. With every small step forward, Leo was right there, by her side, offering her the comfort and support she needed to move forward. One evening, as Emma lay in bed with Leo curled up beside her, she whispered softly to the dog, "I miss her so much, Leo. I don't think that will ever change." Leo lifted his head and nuzzled her hand, his warm body providing comfort as he lay by her side. Emma knew that the pain of losing her mother would never disappear. There would always be days when she would feel sad, and the grief would weigh heavily on her heart. But with Leo, she also knew that she had found a new sense of love and comfort. Leo had helped her rediscover a piece of herself that she had thought was lost forever. As the seasons changed, Emma continued to thrive. She made new friends at school and began to embrace the world around her. Her relationship with her grandparents deepened as well. They had always been there for her, but now, Emma was learning to lean on them for support in a way she hadn't before. She realized that while Leo had been a lifeline, it was also the love and care of her family that helped her heal. One evening, as the sun set over the quiet backyard, Emma and Leo sat together, watching the sky turn shades of pink and orange. "I'm going to be okay, Leo," she whispered, as the dog rested his head on her lap. "I still miss her, but I'm going to be okay." And for the first time in a long while, Emma truly believed it. The story of Emma and Leo teaches us the profound healing power of companionship and unconditional love, especially in times of loss. Emma's journey from grief to acceptance is made possible by Leo, a small dog with a big heart. This bond emphasizes that, even in the darkest moments, love and support from an animal can offer comfort and healing that words often cannot. It highlights the importance of emotional connections, whether through family, friends, or pets, in overcoming life's challenges. In real life, animals like dogs are known for their therapeutic effects on individuals dealing with trauma, grief, or mental health struggles. They provide a non-judgmental, soothing presence that can help people, especially children, navigate their emotional turmoil. Just as Leo guided Emma through her pain, animals in our lives can help us find strength and resilience. Their love allows us to reconnect with the world and find joy again, even after devastating loss. This story reminds us that, no matter the difficulties we face, the companionship of a caring animal can help us heal and rediscover the hope that we thought was lost forever.